So before we start redoing everything here, I'm just looking at what's listening to what's good and what's not good. So you hear that's good. So you're going to hear that's not going to hold. You can. So basically, if I put my screwdriver in here, you can see it just crumbles off the wall. Now, so much time and water has probably gone behind this wall. I had a little scratch here. This is, we're going to keep as much as possible, but this is absolutely disastrous. That's not anything, that is worth keeping in any way, shape or form. There's been water at some point. I mean, obviously probably have come down through the roof there, and you can almost actually see where it's come down. There's these cracks, and that corner has had water come in for obviously quite a while before it was fixed. Because although over here there is a crack, and okay, so this is just where I tested the paint gun, and yes, the plaster here is not, with the paint isn't really adhering to very much either. Let's face it. In fact, that's pretty terrible. But it's quite localized. It's just like a patch, probably of bad plaster. I don't know exactly. Some more up here. So we'll be going around the whole room, and you see directly underneath I think the original colour, because as we go through the various layers, we've got this blue layer that we saw, but the brown layer, which is behind a white layer, which is between the blue layer, this brown layer looks like it's the original, and then even below that, you look here, which is below the brown layer, we have probably how it was a few hundred years ago, which would have just been whitewashed. And below that, directly below that, is this, which is sort of this earth plaster that was used many, many hundreds of years ago. But all of this is just absolutely crumbling off, and there's not much we can do about it except take it off where it comes off. And so because most of the water came down this corner, this is obviously where it's in the worst condition. But another interesting thing we found here, look, down here, is we have this layer, and this layer presumably is like an intermediate layer, because this layer below it corresponds to this layer here. So we've got this line, we've got this zigzag there, and then this is presumably all still the same layer. This is a layer above it, and then we got the brown, but below it we have this line here, and that's part of this here. So below that we have a grey and a black line, and that then, oh no, because that's the same layer as that's brown. So we've got another one here. I have no idea how many times this was painted. Look at we're taking off some serious layers of paint. I think camera is quite good, isn't it? That's 15 layers of paint, who knows? So yeah, no. Lots and lots and lots and lots more just falling off the wall, unfortunately. So there we go. That's what water can do. It's amazing. You wouldn't have thought that water could be really that destructive, but it's not dealt with immediately, and thank God it has now been dealt with. Then you end up with something like this, which is just a disaster. And if you look, you see here. Let's get some focus. Get out of the way so that we have some light. These little spots here are mould, and that's mould underneath layers and layers and layers. So we have to treat that as well. I think I'll just use that anti-mould paint for the first layer. And that'll probably do away with it because it has now been dry for at least, when did they say this roof was redone last? In 1990 something, mid-90s. So it's been dry for 20 odd years. And it is, you know, it's been pouring with rain outside and this is dry as a bone. And where they put cement along it, you know, it's held out quite well, but cement is obviously not the most adapted hole filler for a house like this, because it doesn't allow the stones to breathe. So I'm not going to take it out. I'm just going to do everything around it as best I can. So yeah, that's that sounds good. There, we had something that sounds good there. That sounds sturdy. That doesn't. I'm up here. Look at that. It's just earth. I'm just putting mud out of the wall here. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll find another interesting patch. I shall cut back in, but hopefully I won't be here all night. Okay, so it's the next morning, and I've removed quite a lot of what was very rotten. This wall, where cracks were really, that were always going to come up with problems. I mean, if it comes off with your fingers, it's not going to hold for long. It would be pointless to do this and then have to redo it again in 6 months. 6 months time. So this wall over here is actually very good. Hardly moved. A little bit at the top where that light was. Take that out. And here's some, but basically just paint. So that'll be easy enough to fill. I have quite a big crack here above the door frame. I've had a poke around with a screwdriver and it doesn't look like it's shifted too much on this side. It's very, very slight. So I don't think we're in any grave risk of it collapsing. So yeah, well, just getting on, trying to get everything ready for plaster, which is what we really want to do today, is get the first layer of plaster on. Oops, got my thumb there. Get the first layer of plaster on. So we're getting quite close to the first layer of plastering. I've gone up, done that corner completely. Up along the ceiling, you can see there are some slightly large cracks there. In some places the light blue is held through, in some places it's this ochre. Some of the old paintings are there. A lot has already been cemented over at some point, so I'm going to take a bunch of photos. That's back in the picture again. I'm going to take a bunch of photos and then I'm going to plaster and paint over everything, because none of it is in any condition, as I've mentioned maybe 10 times now. And I know you're all thinking, you heathen, but there's no way. It's been repaired, painted, repaired. There've been all kinds of different things going on in. So it's a shame, but that's the way it is. So I'm going to knock off the last little bits of paint that will fall off. Otherwise, I'm trying to do some plastering and some painting, and then I'm going to get up there with a bucket of muck and I guess start on the ceiling and move my way down. Could probably be a lot of plaster and a lot of filling, and then some cleaning, and then eventually paint. Okay, so we're finally ready for plaster, and that's how much paint and plaster we've knocked off the walls and the ceilings. So bits, that's a bad bit. That's a bad bit. In fact, this whole corner over here, was obviously where most of the water came in. The cracks in the ceiling, a little bit over here and above the doors. So I'm going to put some plaster in a bucket and get stuck in. Okay, so the first bucket's up there. It is extremely tedious doing things above your head. I don't know how plasterers do it. Oh yes, did I mention I'm not a plasterer? Well, the big crack we sort of got on with a bit, and over on this side of the ceiling, as far as I could reach from the ladder, and then because my neck started going, I did this first half of the wall. Now I'm going to take a 5-minute break and then we'll get on with this. Have some lunch, maybe a 10-minute break. We'll see. But I shall be right back. Trying to get plaster to stick to walls and ceilings. Which actually, considering what I was doing when I started on the other side in the bathroom a few months ago, I seem to be much, much better at, because look, there is not that much plaster on the floor. And last time there really, really was half a bucket in the end of it, I think. So, right, see you later. So, a light lunch, focaccia and some parma ham. And now we're gonna keep going, finish up this edge here, move back down the other side of the ceiling, put you back onto time lapse. Okay, so another bucket of plaster just on this wall here. Perhaps the halogen light on it. Now, that means I've done that wall, half the ceiling, that big hole obviously will have to be done again and again until we get something that's usable. This wall over here. I know you guys are all getting seasick with me, but there's no easy way in a round room to go up to the top. Now, what I really want to say about this is, yeah, it's not perfect. Luckily, this sort of raw plaster is quite fashionable at the moment, thank God. But if you remember what that looked like this morning, it's not that bad. And considering that the only other thing I've plastered is that little bathroom in here, and I made a pig's ear of it, and it was very frustrating and it took forever, and this is going much better. It's much, much quicker, and the result is much, much better. So I might have mentioned this before, I'm not a plasterer, but I'm quite happy with what I've done. And I think that anyone, if you just, get over the, oh, what happens if I can't do it, what happens if it doesn't work, and just get out there and do it. By the time you've gotten around like the first wall, you're starting to pick it up. And I think maybe by the end of the house, I might be able to say, well, I might be a little bit of a plasterer. But it's not bad. And it's very, very satisfying, because it means that, you know, it's another thing that I've done and I haven't had someone else do for me. I haven't had to pay for it. We're talking, you know, tools from the DIY store. None of this is very expensive. At 10 euro, I don't even know what they're called, the flat trowel, the one that goes on the wall, and then like a little putty knife thing, and a bag of plaster. So a lot of people have written, oh, you know, this is living the dream and you're so courageous, and you're not. Well, I'm not, and it's not. None of it's hard. Most of it's just common sense and practice, and you just do it and it works it out. You can look stuff up on YouTube. I was just thinking to myself, I'm sure I looked this up, because I did look up plastering, and you know, you get the angle and the things like that. But learning by doing is the only real way to get into it. I was thinking to myself, I'm sure I read plaster to the light, but now I'm thinking about it with the door over there. I think I've plastered in completely the wrong direction. Not the end of the world though, it'll be fine. So I think maybe another 2, maybe 3 buckets of plaster, and we'll be done. And that would be really good if we could get that done today. You know, we got an early start. It is, let me get my watch on, it's now 20 to 4. So I'm not convinced I'll get it all done today, because my back is starting to hurt a bit. That ceiling is a nightmare. But otherwise we'll just finish it up tomorrow morning. It's not a huge rush. I just want to sort of get it painted before I have to go back to Austria. But I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy. And it's so satisfying. It just, yeah. So, we'll get on and finish it. There's been plenty of time lapse, so I don't think I'll time lapse too much more unless something very exciting happens. I might, you know, put it on anyway, just in case I fall off the ladder or something, which would be quite amusing, I guess, as long as I don't hurt myself. Yeah, we'll just try and get this room finished. So I'm going to mix up another bucket load and we'll keep going. So as you can see, this is a different type of plaster, because I've run out of the one I did the rest of the room with. That one was for 1 to, let's say, I don't know, 3 to 8 millimeters. This here is for 2 to 50 millimeter holes and thicknesses. So probably actually better for the hole up there, which we'll do as soon as that's kind of set a bit. And for these bits, we're going to try and get this, which is obviously the worst piece of the wall. We've done the worst piece of the ceiling already. And we'll see how it comes up. It'll probably be it's kind of beige and the other one's kind of grey, but we'll see how we do. Okay, so that plaster is very different. It goes on very differently. It is a different colour, you can see. It seems to be, I don't know if I mixed it differently or I didn't put enough water in, but it seemed to be much thicker, gooier and stickier, which is good. In fact, I put the last little bit in that hole up there and it's held out quite well. So, because it's thicker and gooier, it was much greater effort to spread it around the wall, but it still looks okay. I'm not upset or disappointed with that. That could be fine. But it's been a long day and my back is starting to go, ooh, don't do that anymore. So I guess I have a lot of other things to do. So I guess I shall do some of those and come back to plastering tomorrow morning. Okay, so it's the next morning. The plaster is drying. You can still see the dark areas where it's not dried properly yet. Up on the ceiling as well. What we're going to do now is basically finish plastering, go around the walls, get everything together, do that piece of ceiling, so that we can say that we're done with that. And once we've done the plastering, then we'll get on with this plasterboard roll. So, another bucket done of plaster. We finished that wall now. It's not perfect, you know, it starts off very well at that end where we had very little trouble, and we were using it's all renovation plaster, so it'll let the walls breathe and not damage what's underneath it. But we started off with fine and moved on to medium, and this is sort of medium coarse because that's just what I have. And it'll be fine. I think I made that bucket up a little bit too watery, but it did go on. And it doesn't look catastrophic. The problem here is the walls sort of bend in. Maybe you can see it, they bend into the corner. So when you're trying to trowel, you can't because... My phone, not very clever. You can't because, and I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to try and make this visible. So when I put my trowel up against the wall, you see there's a belly in the middle. So what I'm doing is basically making tracks in the wall. So I've gone over it with a little spatula. I'm sure a plasterer would know how to do that. I'm not sure if I mentioned before, but I'm not a plasterer. I might have mentioned that once before. Plaster everywhere. And my face itches today for some reason, maybe from the plastering yesterday, maybe from some of the insulation stuff. But anyway, it's very warm. Weather's delightful. Shall we have a quick look outside? Look at that. That's what we're working for. That's what's going to make it all worthwhile, is sat out here with a glass of wine one day this summer, hopefully. Right, time for another bucket then. Stove still soldering on here. We've done that. Pretty good here, around the door, up there. So just that bit of ceiling left to do. My shoulders are telling me to stop. I'm not sure how many times I've dropped muck on the floor or in my face. My skin is not doing very well with all of this. My hands, obviously. But it's looking better and better, you know, the patchy bits is still obviously where it's wet and where we change cement, so it'll all need to dry out. I guess overnight we'll put I have a little tiny space heater, and it is a little tiny room, so that'll probably do. And yeah, just keep soldering on. It's getting there, slowly but surely. It's getting there. It's far from perfect, but it's much better than it was, and I don't think it needs to be, you know, plastered in that sort of perfect way that modern houses are, because it's not a modern house and it's never been plastered perfectly, and I think it would look funny if the walls were all straight and perfect. But once we get some fresh paint on it, and on this plaster I'm going to have to sand a bit. I'm not very good at outside edges, as you can see, so I've just put a bit more on so I can sand it down. But I think I think this room will look fabulous. So it's lunchtime. We're going to have something to eat and then keep going. Okay, so that's it. I finished plastering. The last bit was there around the door, the light switch. So As we go all the way around the room and on the ceiling, we're done. That's going to be the end of the plastering video. There's more time lapse on that than your average David Attenborough film, so I'm sorry for that. Still, I hope you enjoyed that little bit, and check back for the other videos. The next video will be about doing that plasterboard wall over here, which I have already started because we get lots of things going on at the same time, but it makes sense to me, and obviously if you don't think so then comment down below, but it seems to make sense to me to arrange the different parts of this room rather than try and keep it chronological, because I'm running in and out and doing other things while things are drying. So if that's okay, then let me know. If it's not okay, then I'll change and we'll just do everything kind of haphazardly. But this is the plastering one, and there will be a plasterboarding or drywalling for the American friends one, and then there will be a painting one, and there will be an electrics one, but it won't be just this room, it'll be quite a lot more of the electrics, so that'll probably not come straight away. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.